Hello, my name is Sherman Haywood Cox II, and this is the Learn Black Preaching video. In this video, we're going to talk about how to restructure a sermon outline. So you have a sermon outline and you want to restructure it so that you can actually use it to preach. One of the first things that you normally have to do with a sermon outline, especially one that you find on the net or in other sources, is you must add a celebration. Effective sermons in the African American tradition usually and normally end in celebration. If you want more information on this, I would encourage you to go to soulpreaching.com and search for celebration. A celebration, in short, is where you celebrate the main truth of the sermon, the main point of the sermon, the gospel claim in the sermon, the truth of it affects the people on an emotional level as well as an intellectual level. You celebrate the truth of the gospel, and you do that by looking for a hymn, a song, a story, or even a scripture. Oftentimes a story is used that the celebration will center around. So you're seeking for a way to celebrate the goodness of the gospel while summarizing the particular sermon. Another thing that you often have to do to these sermon outlines that you find is to reorder the points. Sometimes you reorder them by changing them to the biblical order, as the points fall in the Bible. Oftentimes you can change the sermon outline so that it follows that particular order. Another thing that you can do, which is a very effective way of reordering the points, is to reorder them so that they get progressively intense. A particular sermon should be I don't know if you've seen the hooping curve. If not, I would encourage you once again to go back to soulpreaching.com and search for hooping curve. Here the sermon, as the sermon continues, the intensity of the sermon grows, and you can definitely increase the effectiveness of your sermon by making the points progressively intense. In a lot of these outlines, the sermon points are not in any kind of order. For there's no thought as far as the intensity of the point in the order. So I would reorder them so that they get progressively intense. Another thing that you can do to restructure or reorder a sermon is to drop and add points. This is something that you often have to do. The first thing, as I say on the outline, is to remove points that are unrelated to the biblical text. Oftentimes you'll find points that are, if not unrelated, they are only tangentially related. It is difficult to find out how they are derived from the scripture. And so in that case you can remove these points. Another thing that you can do is remove points that are unrelated to the sermonic purpose. When you find the purpose of the sermon, you should remove any point that doesn't support that particular point. All of your subpoints should support the main point, and so you remove any of the points that do not support the main sermonic point. Another thing is, if you are reading the scripture and you see main points in the scripture that should be addressed in the sermon but are not, oftentimes you will add these major points to your sermon outline. Another thing that you can do when restructuring or changing the sermon outline into something that you can use is to update the title. Update the sermon title. Many people do not spend any time at all thinking about the title, which is why I wrote the book, the Sermon Title Handbook, which you can find on soulpreaching.com. You can also go to soulpreaching.com and find other sermon title information, just typing in sermon title in the search box. But you update the title by providing a title that is related to the sermon. You update the title by thinking about the title as the first move of the sermon. You know, the sermon can be seen as moves. The first move is the title of the sermon. Finally, as Gardner Taylor says, the title should contain the essence of the sermon. The whole sermon should be there in embryo, should be there in the sermon title. In summary, when you're evaluating a sermon title, a sermon outline for use, when you're restructuring a sermon outline for use, you should often add a celebration if one is not there. You should reorder the points of the sermon as noted before. Oftentimes you're going to have to drop and add points. And finally, you're going to have to update the title in most cases. Once again, I encourage you to visit learnblackpreaching.com. Here you're going to learn how to preach in the black preaching tradition by videos and audio. Also, there is some text. Once again, my name is Sherman Haywood Cox II. God bless you.